everyone. We are now going to start the discussion. Everyone's great. We're great panelists. So right now we're just going to start the webinar portion, the discussion portion of today's event. First of all, I want to welcome everyone to today's event, which is, is Facebook Libra a force for good? We got some really great panelists here. But before I go through that, I'll just do some quick introductions. So on the right, on the top right, you see a Q&A, and you can type in your questions in there. And after you type in your questions, you can vote which questions you want. So we're very democratic here. At the bottom, we see some people already chatting. That's the space chat. So you can kind of give feedback. You can ask other things. You can give us feedback as speakers. So definitely leverage that. So before we go, my name's Ho-Yin. It's your private key. Yeah, don't
can you see who sent that or not?
It's like Mochi.
People can enter their name,
wow.
But the name is like people can enter whatever name they want.
Okay. FYI, I sent it. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay. So do some quick introductions. My name's Ho-Yin. I'm the founder of Remo. This platform is an online virtual networking platform for events, to host events, really focusing on bringing people together and networking and having great conversation, meeting people and expanding your network so you can do it at the freedom at your home. This event is co-organized with Remo and Open Minds. We have some people from Open Minds here. They are a social media management company. They also do a lot of PR and marketing for blockchain and crypto projects. Eliza, please correct me there if I'm wrong. I want to say kind of like the wrong thing there. And also this event is in partnership also with Event Bank. So before we go in, I'm going to give each speaker to kind of introduce themselves, give them maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute, little short intro. So first off, we have Charles Yang from Genesis Block. Charles, just give us a quick intro.
Hey, thanks, Ho-Yin. Yeah, this is super cool to be on a webinar, and Remo is I think a lot of people are going to use this going forward for events. Yeah, Genesis Block in Hong Kong. I think many of people here, in Asia, might have heard of us. We started building community middle of 2017. We also provide liquidity through our ATMs. I think we have 40 in Hong Kong now. And we also have an OTC desk. So for me personally, I've been on the trading team, I guess since the end of 17. And these days, besides the brokerage side, we're doing a lot of prop trading as well, mostly focused on cross-border arbitrage and, helping clients that want to kind of move money around. It could be cash, it could be bank wires. We just try to help clients, whatever they're trying to do. And yeah, we're expanding, we're in Korea, obviously a big presence in China, and recently we're looking at Thailand. So yeah, please reach out if you guys, want to get anything done in those regions.
Thank you, Charles. Next, we have Anton Xue. He's part of many things, so I'm going to let him talk. What are the things that he's part of?
Okay, so two main hats. My name is Anton Xue. I am the co-founder of a company called CoinPip, venture backed by 500 startups more than nearly 5 years ago. So what we do there is leveraging on cryptos. We were the first ones to leverage on cryptos as a rails to do the transfers back in 2015. But I guess in terms of the regulatory space, people know me more as the chair of the blockchain association here in Singapore called Access. We've worked very deeply with different regulators around the world, obviously with our own as well, and recently held a V20 event at the G20 Osaka to speak to the different intergovernmental regulators, like FATF, Financial Action Task Force, for example, and did a lot of regulatory work such as code of conduct, different guides for the different parts of the industry, so that bankability will not be a problem in the future. As many know, getting bank accounts is not easy for crypto companies. So I will add value on that in this discussion.
Thank you, Anton. And finally, we have
Kim, co-founder and Blue Block Capital. We're a liquidity service provider in Hong Kong. Been doing business for about 15 months. Previous to that, I spent about 13 years at PwC and Deloitte, did a lot of the blockchain projects, and looked after at least 3 crypto exchanges during my time at PwC. So looking forward to talking on this panel.
Great. Thanks, guys. So today's topic really is centrally revolving around Facebook Libra, the new token / cryptocurrency that Facebook is proposing. There's been a lot of, there's some congressional hearings that have been happening. I think this past week and also last week as well. So a lot of conversation about it. So I'm going to start off maybe just talking a little bit about like what Facebook Libra is, just to kind of set the stage. And I was wondering, what can maybe you guys maybe explain a little bit about what you guys generally understand Libra to be? We'll just start with like some foundational knowledge. So does anybody want to take this on first, or do you want me to choose? Anton, do you want to take this on first? Just kind of like, what are the general things about Libra that we should all know first before we start talking about regulatory and going deep about what are the impacts? Anton, do you mind sharing a little bit about it?
Libra is, first and foremost, they are not a Facebook coin. Okay, it's not like Facebook actually has the power to control, not like a central bank. What they're trying to push is a quote-unquote cryptocurrency, where it's a consortium, meaning many different entities involved in being in control or overseeing this new crypto. So there's many companies involved. For example, Spotify, Uber, Airbnb, many big companies involved to oversee the use of this crypto. But one thing to understand is the context of Libra is that they are trying to solve the payment issues to places where there are no financial services. They're not as top-notch as, for example, Hong Kong, US, Singapore, for example, because they have over 2.5 billion people, many of them from emerging market countries where they don't have bank accounts. So that is first and foremost what they want to solve, is having a Libra cryptocurrency to facilitate payments, facilitate commerce, remittance, and so
on. David or Charles, you guys have anything to add to that?
So, you know, they're trying to create a stable coin. The key fact that you have to know is it's not a typical, like if you look at USDT, USDC, these are all USD pegged stable coins where you send money to a specific bank account, they custody it. If you send $100, they'll send you back 100 USDC, for instance, right? In Libra's case, this is going to be a token backed by a basket of assets. And so far they've confirmed that it's going to be maybe 4 or 5 major currencies, such as like the Japanese yen, US dollar, and also involve some very short-term risk-free kind of securities. So it'll actually fluctuate in price. Like if you're thinking in a specific currency term, Libra will fluctuate, and their belief is that, I guess, by having decentralized kind of assets, it's more globally stable than just putting it all into US dollar.
Okay, that's great. That's helpful. Okay, so I want to ask you guys, what is your general takeaway about Libra? Now we kind of have this, so now we can talk about maybe your general takeaway without going too deep, but kind of like the high level take on it. David, would you want to start?
Yeah, I guess my take on it is I think Facebook is doing this for multiple reasons. I mean, everybody knew that they were going to integrate P2P payments, right? Integrating WhatsApp, Instagram, and all that kind of stuff. But I think the reasons why they're going with this type of Libra, as well as using multiple currencies. But if you take a look at Facebook, I believe 1/4 of the population in the world is using Facebook. So what that means is that there's a lot of people out there that's not using US dollars, right? So it doesn't really make sense for like literally everybody to be using US dollars. So then they're trying to create some sort of, stable cryptocurrency to kind of use and use it as a P2P when they're using it WhatsApp, like let's say in Thailand or in some of these other countries. And again, there's a lot of problems with Facebook from a business standpoint because they've been kind of being grilled for the past like year or two in regards to data privacy, etc. It makes sense for them to do something blockchain related. Again, you know, people can argue that in regards to that it's not really blockchain, it's just a cryptocurrency, like stable back. I mean, that's true. But these guys are trying to do whatever it takes to kind of get them out of this hole that they are in right now, right? Because, I mean, how many people, I mean, I'm not using Facebook anymore, right? So they need to look for different sources of revenue. And if you look beyond just the stable token itself, if these guys are basically acquiring, you know, these bonds and treasuries and etc., these guys are earning interest rates, right? So imagine right now interest rates are really low. If interest rates start rising, just like, you know, like long time ago when we were in college, we would put a lot of money in ING and get like 10%, right? So if interest rate starts to rise, which is likely to happen, right? Then Facebook or Libra or their association, etc., they're actually going to make a lot of money holding all these reserves, you know, in their bank accounts and things like that. So it has multiple values, not just in terms of P2P, but also in terms of like earning this type of interest dividends and all that kind of stuff. So Facebook is definitely trying to look at other sources of revenue to kind of boost their balance sheet, because first and foremost, they have a commitment to their shareholders, and the shareholders right now aren't too happy.
Charles?
So quite a few points that David touched on, right? First thing I think people need to know is like Libra as a stable coin, that's one token, but they also have a security token. So you know, Facebook, their claim is we don't control Libra. That's not the goal, right? They want to put together an association. They're targeting 100 different companies. Sorry guys, one sec.
Housekeeping. Next time we need to say that at the beginning.
Give me a second.
All right.
Let me do it mine as well.
Sorry, can I continue or?
No, of course.
Yeah.
No.
So what is a security token, right? Like they're selling shares as like it's funding. So every company that takes part has to put in $10 million, and they get they're buying $10 million worth of this I guess shares in Libra. And as David mentioned, for any stablecoin, when you custody assets, the returns are massive. Like they don't need to charge fees because they're just printing money sitting on, just say, billions. In Facebook's case, it could be trillions of dollars, right? So naturally, people that like companies that want to be part of this association are very incentivized because it will be one of a kind, right? Like if Facebook does it first, it will probably dominate globally. And if someone like Amazon or some, I don't know, maybe WeChat, like other countries, other companies can try and compete, but first mover advantage is huge. So that's one point I want to touch on. And Facebook having control, like not having control is something that they're referring to in the long term. Like who are they kidding, right? Like they founded Libra coin. They wrote all the code. It's a separate entity based in Switzerland, but at the end of the day, for the first year or two, all the protocol and the direction of the coin will be driven by Facebook. The good thing about that is like the government has a very easy time controlling it because they just say, hey, okay, we're gonna have a hearing, come to court. We're gonna grow you, we're gonna tell you what is gonna be allowed and not allowed. So from the government's perspective, like I think, you know, there's a lot of hurdles. I personally don't think it's gonna launch anytime soon. Like there's too many, like in terms of licenses and all of that, there's too much to go through. There's a lot of different countries that have a stake in this. So any central bank, any ally to the US will be pissed off, right? If they allow. Yeah, I think, you know, Facebook definitely does have a lot of control right now. And the government will be watching extremely closely.
So that's a really good segue into our next question. So on Facebook, on July 16th and 17th, David Marcus, who's the head of basically the organization that is created Libra, he was at the Senate Banking Committee on July 16th and 17th to be grilled by legislators, and a lot of people were able to put in their kind of their opinions about it. So this is a really good segue. Like, what do you think after the Congress, Anson? What do you think after Congress? Do you agree with what Charles is saying is probably not going to, it's pretty much going to be stopped in its tracks? Not much movement from here on out. Like, what's your take on that?
So I was listening to some parts of it. I'm actually I learned quite a lot as well, how some are so dumb in Congress and some are so smart. They actually understand, like, the diversity within Congress. Understanding this is quite amazing. Yes, I think it will take a while, because when you touch on securities, that means you're touching on existing laws. And trying to match the existing laws with this new tech is definitely not easy. But one of the main things that I find it very strange and weird, maybe because US being EUS, they only know their own laws, is that the Financial Action Task Force at the G20 has agreed that if you are a service provider for cryptocurrencies, you need to share the sender and receiver information, which means that, let's say, two exchanges, when they are sending one from, let's say, from Binance and then to Bitfinex, for example, Bitfinex will need to know the information from Binance. Binance needs to share that. So when they keep talking about privacy, that data privacy, there's nothing private now. If you are wanting to be a service provider, you will need to share the information. Okay, so yes, it will take a while. I think because of the security aspect, when you are having something backed and as of this scale, so I think even a year later, you might be hearing something else. Another company leveraging on the hearings of the congressional hearings to do something that is maybe smaller in scale but easier to launch. So Facebook did a good thing for the crypto ecosystem. They allowed everybody to know more about cryptos, but they might be just a punching bag for at least the next year.
David, what do you think?
Agree with Anson. I guess just to kind of further add to that, I think, again, Facebook is taking a huge, like kind of like a punching bag in terms of being the first mover, but at the same time is someone's going to do it, whether it's Facebook or maybe it's like Alibaba, etc. Someone's going to do it, and for them, it makes sense that they try to do it. They may not be the guy that does it at the end of the day, but to not take that chance, someone else is going to definitely do it, right? And then when it comes down to regulatory, I kind of know about this space because I did a lot of regulatory consulting when it comes down to financial services, etc. The best way to get government support is to be very transparent and share it from the way beginning, not like, oh, after you develop it and be like, oh, if you're very from the beginning, like you share all the information, your intentions, etc., and then it's a lot easier to get them to come over after, like, let's say a year or two, right? But again, if like, let's say Facebook built everything and they're like ready to go live and they told the government would probably be pretty pissed, right? So they're doing the right thing in terms of how to work with the government. Of course, right now, Senate, etc., is kind of grilling them back and forth, etc. But again, that was kind of expected, right? So from here, it can only improve because all like the FUD in regards to the pushback, everybody knows about the laws, etc. So it can actually only improve from now going forward. By the end of the day, whether it's Facebook or another entity or another collaboration group, we don't know, but I think it's still moving in the right path. I mean, we're eventually going to have some sort of one world digital currency, right? It's inevitable because a lot of the US corporations are all global. Like, let's say like Apple, how much of the revenue comes out of the US in sales? So it's eventual, right? So you already have, in terms of one world currency, the closest thing right now is SDR basket, right? And the Chinese RMB got added, I think, like last year after like failing a couple of times. So someone's trying to create a digital world currency, right? And wants that to be involved, right? Whether it happens, we don't know. But again, they're doing the right things in terms of being the first mover advantage, working with the government, etc.
Okay. So Liz has a question with 6 votes. I'm going to take this one. I think this one's a pretty good time to come in. So it says, let's say the Libra project does succeed. What do you think about its impact, both in blockchain and, of course, generally speaking? I mean, I also would throw in there what happens if it doesn't succeed at this moment too, because I think if it succeeds or does not succeed, I think it will have an impact. Anson, I'll let you take the first stab at this question.
I don't think the US will say no. They will just keep it going for like a damn long time, right? Because this is also a big, very big, too big an opportunity to ignore. So definitely, if I don't see any failure, it's just that the longer it goes, the more grilling it goes, everyone will learn more about what cryptocurrency is about, right? So, and that is great to me. Because once the public starts understanding what cryptos are supposed to be about, decentralization, privacy, and all that, it will get into the people, right? So it actually, to me, benefits it the longer it goes on, longer it goes. So if it does succeed, two things: it's launching and sustaining. So we congrats them for launching, okay, if it does come out. But now we need to see how sustainable it is. As I said, once it comes out, people will start learning about, for example, what Satoshi's main philosophy is about. Once they know more about Libra, that it being so centralized and they're not going towards decentralization, it will move out. It will move to other cryptos, because that's the whole point. Once you launch, it's easy to transfer between different cryptos.
Got it. David, do you have anything to add there, or?
I mean, I agree with Anson. It's just gonna happen,
okay,
right? I mean, the thing is, again, kind of just to add to my previous discussion, was that all the governments want us to go cashless, right? We're eventually going to be cashless because they're just, you can't track cash, right? So government does want some sort of digital currency where they could trace everything, right? So I think right now, probably the Libra project is headed the right direction. So I think it's a net positive at the end of the day.
Cool. Charles, you have anything to add here?
Yeah. So another thing we need to point out is, like, Libra in its current design, it's permissioned only from the sense of being a validator. So being, like, if you guys know anything about Bitcoin, hopefully you know like what full nodes are, or I guess people that have the right to mine, right? Libra, same thing. Like, they call it validators. They only provide access. Like, you need to be approved by the association to be a verified validator of the network, right? But it doesn't mean the chain is completely permissioned. It's actually a pseudonymous chain, which is like Bitcoin. So there will be a public explorer where you can see all transactions, like a stock market, right? So you can't recognize whose address is whose, because it's all in like hashes, but you can see the amounts moving around. And when someone sends you coins, you can publicly check yourself whether this is on chain or not. In this form, like, there's no way that like any government will allow like this to happen. It's like pretty much telling all the banks, yo, open all the data on transactions publicly, right? So this is like one of the key elements of Libra that needs to change. And Libra trying to become, in their white paper, they talk about, 5-10 years down the line, they want to make it completely permissionless, proof of stake. So anyone who holds Libra can stake it and be part of the network, right? Like, it's just decentralization. It makes no sense for the governments, right? Like, they're going against what they stand for: control and like power, influence. Giving that all up when it comes to financials is obviously not in the best interest, especially for, as I mentioned before, like smaller countries. Like, any nation that has a relatively shaky economy, high inflation, everyone's just going to ignore the monetary policy, right? As a resident of that country, all I need to do is shift all my assets to Libra, and now like your currency is worthless. Like, the nation's like native currency is no longer valid. Trying to make economic change with policy doesn't work anymore. I think what we're going to see is, like in Hong Kong, there's an app called PayMe. You can use any bank account in Hong Kong, link it with a credit card, instant payments. It's great. And you need to do some KYC. But what's the key difference? There's a limit on everything, right? So they could launch Libra and they could say, okay, everyone's limit is 5,000 US dollars per month, right? Like this is something that I think could happen. But then the downside is the impact is very limited because they're limiting all the wires, right?
That's good. That's a good question. So I'm gonna answer this. I'm gonna take another question from the crowd here. So hopefully will be a short answer. Do you believe Libra is non-profit driven, and will they keep their promise to do good? David.
From how Libra is structured, it is non-profit, but then you also have Calibra, right, which is owned by Facebook. So I mean, yeah, it is non-profit, but at the end of the day, like you kind of want to see from the high-level view, right? And I do think Facebook will profit from Libra, but Libra is non-profit, right? In terms of promise to do good, I hope so, right? I think at least Facebook is in a position where they must do good to win back the trust of their user base and customers, right? So it's a little bit different. So I think they will try to do good, but let's see what happens because money makes people greedy.
Correct. Yes.
Charles?
I don't know. Do people really care? Like, this kind of question is so subjective, and it's impossible to. It's just a guessing game, right? And their motives can change easily by the time this launches. So I don't think there's a correct answer here. Yeah.
Anson?
So it's one thing for sure is the initial validators. They are all super huge unicorns with big VCs behind. Some are listed, so all of them do have a for-profit motive behind. So I guess one thing to note is when they are being based inside Switzerland, especially when you run a nonprofit, be doing good or not doing good is not the main question. It should be the constitution of the Libra Foundation. The governance has to be done well. Once the governance rules are set in properly inside the foundation, making sure that the conflicts of interest are very minimized, then it doesn't matter if they do good or not. Okay, then it will keep everything in check as long as the Libra Foundation constitution is done properly.
Interesting. Okay. Let's continue with that line here. What do you think? And I think you guys touched upon this like a little bit. What do you think in terms of actions improvements that Libra needs to do to be more well accepted? I mean, you guys talk about transparency, but do you guys think that there's anything else that they need to do in order to win it back, or is it just more education? David?
Just need to win support of local governments. Because I think from like a tech side, user base, I mean, they could like just take over very instantly, right? I think it's just getting government support to okay it, in my opinion. That's the biggest hurdle and probably the main hurdle. Tech side, I think everything's pretty much there.
Charles?
Yeah, I mean, there's an issue with like competition. So fair competition is one of the key issues right now. Like, obviously, the U.S. government is very concerned about a tech giant having access to all this data and acting as a financial institution. It's a lot of power. Like as it is, it's already a very powerful platform. Having all these users, like I don't know. Like Facebook really needs to step away. That's what they need to do and make sure that there's really no ties to this. Being part of the association is probably could be a no-no as well. They might have to give that up completely. So, you know, that would that would be them doing good, right? For the good of banking the unbanked, like they would have to make that sacrifice, I think.
Anson?
So I still find the model a bit too ambitious unless all the nodes, all the validators within the initial network all have some sort of banking or financial license. I don't know how they are going to convert the Libras back to cash. Like if you're in Indonesia, in Cambodia, or whatever country, you still need to pay your taxes in the normal currency unless the governments will accept Libra, right? So you still need to work with banks. And not only that, at least in Singapore's case, when a particular Bitcoin merchant accepts Bitcoin and then there were payments done to the bank account, the banks have the right to shut down the accounts as well. So if the merchants have the account shut down and they get scared to use this, how are you going to work on Libra properly, right? So if they don't work with the banks, unless they have another strategy right now to get every single node to have some sort of a banking license, I also don't know how this is going to take off, because by thinking that Libra, everything will stay inside Libra, also doesn't benefit the governments as what we were saying just then.
Right. Okay.
So in the hearing with the government, right? So they were talking about what Libra is, etc. Is it a bank, etc. Even Trump was saying that's fine. They just apply for a banking license. Again, they're trying to basically avoid regulatory by not applying for the banking license. But I think they pretty much need to now. I mean, from a technical perspective, it is kind of like another PayPal, which is Facebook's argument that they're just like a PayPal with another stable token that can be transferred. They're just facilitator. But the thing is even if you may not think that it's a typical bank, just the amount of reserves they have can cause systematic risk, right? And that's what they're like the regulators and the government's worried about is like, let's say Libra, let's say it holds in trillions and trillions of dollars, right? It's at the end of the day, it's a system, it's risk, right? So it's in the same ballpark as if like, let's say and create systematic risk, right? So I do think that they need to, they'll probably have a better chance of getting government support if they just apply for the banking license. But again, if they do that, I don't think they may be able to kind of achieve what they want out of Libra because of the regulations that would go and follow if they were a bank.
Okay. All right. So we're getting pretty close. So I'm going to put in one more final question to you guys. And I'm going to take this one from the crowd. The question is, given that Libra can track transactions, do you not fear that it will fulfill a world controlled by big social media companies? For example, Dave Edgar's book on The Circle, movie acted by Tom Hanks. Charles, do you think that this is pretty potentially going to be controlled by big social media companies?
So this book, I haven't read the book. So this book is about social media companies taking over the world.
Is that your question?
Has anybody read this book? No?
I haven't read it.
Come out on Netflix. That
oh, it's on Netflix.
Yeah. There was an episode.
Wait, is that the one with Hermione from Harry Potter?
Yes.
She's working at Google, right?
Yeah. There was a clip on.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good movie. I mean, this is very speculative and very forward-looking. As far as we know, they might already be tracking everything, right? Like all this paranoia about, oh, don't buy a Huawei phone because the Chinese government is listening to what you're doing, right? Like use a webcam cover, physical cover, because the CIA could be watching you do bad things, right? I think as a regular citizen of the world, this is above our pay scale, man. We have no idea, right? To be honest. Yeah.
That's right. David?
Again, we don't know what the future brings, but the thing is, I feel like if you take a look at how history over the course of years goes, if you take a look at history itself, right, is the government being a little bit more tracking everything, every 5-10 years? I mean, would you agree that the government knows more about you? Yes, right? So definitely it's trending towards there. I think in order for the government to actually be able to track everything without its citizens creating problems, there needs to be some sort of black swan event, right? And then the government usually comes in and kind of saves the day and says, oh, you know, we'll protect you. Let's all go online, right? But unless we have a black swan event like that, I think it's very hard to win the citizen support. So I think it's just wait and see. But again, I think that if they really wanted to track everything, they'd create the black swan event.
Interesting. Anton?
So, sorry, think from it this way. All the bank transfers you do today cross borders, it's already being tracked, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And not only that, so if a wrong bank transfer happens, SWIFT, although being centralized, can actually revert back. Okay, but for Bitcoin, for example, if you send to a wrong to a wrong address, that's it. And what the FedEx has said that they will be tracking every single transaction through crypto service providers anyway. And now because Bitcoin and all these cryptos we can't track, we have separate groups right now, working groups, working with both the government and the large crypto providers, including Tether themselves, to come up with a solution like a messaging system, right? So in my view, if you don't want to be tracked, you don't use any crypto exchange at all. You just mine your coins and you don't touch outside the system. You do cash. You didn't hear this from me, but this is the truth anyway. Then it's fine, okay? But if you're going through exchanges, you're going to use normal commercial entities to do your transfers. Whatever you do now, the trend is you are going to be tracked, and there's nothing we can do about it.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Wow. This is really great conversation. We've actually gone over time. So first of all, I want to thank all of our panelists for today. We're now going to move on to the next portion, which is some more networking. So please stick around, learn from the speakers, learn from all the other audience. Most of the learning is actually learned through talking to people. So please turn on your microphone and your camera and start interacting with people for the rest of the time. All right, thank you guys. Thank you for participating, and I'll see you guys in the networking.